Saul and Battery, hosted by Mel and Kelly.
And Mike.
Forget what you know. Forget what you know. Saul and Battery.
And we're live, uncomfortably so on camera. It's much easier to hold that mic up, the speaker up to the microphone when I'm not on camera. But hey, welcome to the season finale show of A Saul and Battery. I'm Kelly Thul at KELLYTHUL on Twitter. And with me, as always, is Mel.
Hey, I'm Mel at Karmic9 on Twitter, and over there in the dark
Dun, dun, dun.
is Mike.
Hello, everyone.
So we're going a little different this time, gang. We've gone on camera. First, A Saul and Battery, where your commentators are on camera. So there you go. Alrighty.
Are you going to explain why this change, Kelly?
Well, I guess that probably would be worth a point, wouldn't it? There is that I am, for tonight's show, I am sporting a very fine piece of headwear done by our very own Mel. This is the Kettlehead official kettle hat, I guess is what we could call, in Hamblindigo blue. So it really couldn't be. I see these selling like hotcakes. These are going to be the in thing for all kettleheads. So I am, and I'm already getting a little warm. I have to tell you. So it's a very effective hat there. But Mel did, as usual, an outstanding job. And if you hadn't checked the blog or Instagram or those types of things, Mel also knocked off a wonderful Jane's hat for Julianne Emery a little while back, and she had promised to post a selfie with it, and she did. And our most recent blog post had her selfie and my hat selfie together, which wasn't really hard to pick out the best selfie of the two there, but mine has a handle and hers doesn't, so
True.
So there. But she's been very appreciative of that, and it was very cool. Had tweeted out earlier on that we were doing the show tonight and that I would be sporting the Hamblindigo blue hat, and Patrick Fabian, Julie, and the Better Call Saul official count all favorited a post to this one. So,
Wow.
So that's kind of cool.
I missed all that. Cool. Awesome.
But thanks to Mel, and this was done. How long does it take one to put together a Kettlehead hat, Mel?
I don't know. Because I'm a multitasker. I knit while I'm doing other things. So I don't know. It takes a good many hours, but not an extraordinary amount of time. The hat portion is the easy part, but it took me a while to figure out the spout because that was new to me. So I think I've got it down now, though.
Yeah.
That'll be my long con, y'all. I'm just going to start pumping out Kettlehead hats and turn into Slippin' Jimmy.
There you go.
Was it difficult to match up the Hamblindigo blue?
Well, I am nitpicky about these things, and yes, I have gone through several different yarns looking for the correct shade of Hamblindigo blue.
Did you go into the yarn store and ask for Hamblindigo blue?
No, because I don't think any of those old ladies watch Better Call Saul. I don't think they'd know.
They might be clients, Jimmy's. I don't know.
They could be. They could have had a will done recently. You never know.
So Mike, of your many talents, one of the underrated ones is that you are a fashion consultant to the stars. and I was struggling. I believe that actually the spout is pointing to the west, to the new frontier for tonight's show. But my question to you is, should I have it facing west, or should I go that way, or should I go kind of a jaunty, partial? What's the right kettle
I
head?
feel like you need to go one side to the other, because in this episode, we see Jimmy sort of facing his past and reliving parts of it, but then moving forward at the end of it. So I feel like you need to start off on one side and slowly rotate.
Oh, that's gonna. Okay, that's a little more work than I anticipated, but I think it's a very good suggestion. We'll do that. Excellent.
Okay.
You just need to model through it, Kelly.
That's right. I'm gonna tough it out.
All right.
So we got to check here and see. I see we've already got Mr. Schick active on Twitter. Let's see what he's got to say. Yes, mine has a handles. My hand is so. So Sean, so I'm a little. Sean's being a jerk. Shockingly enough, I think my hat's better because it's got a handle. He disagrees. So.
Well, he thinks the Jane's hat is better because it has Julianne Emery.
I would have to agree. I'm really not going to argue that point.
So there you go.
Excellent.
All
righty. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Mel's going to kick us off talking about the cold open.
Okay. So the cold open was pretty small this episode. We start out back in Slippin' Jimmy days in the bar that he and Marco spend a lot of time in. And Marco is in there busily trying to con some college kids. And they finally give up, walk away after he gets $20 off of them. And Jimmy walks in his mullet and his very interesting shirt and tells Marco he's leaving. He's got a plane to catch with Chuck. They seem to be surprised that he beat the rap. So if we harken back to the previous episode when we found out how Jimmy ended up into all of this situation, we'll get more detail on that later. But Chuck came to save him from a interesting charge. And he hasn't beaten the rap, but Chuck got him out. And he is going to Albuquerque to work in the mailroom at Chuck's law firm, and he is there to say goodbye to Marco. Marco tries to talk him out of it, but he seems really sincere in his determination to get a new life, Jimmy does. And he even tries
he knows he's going to go out there, start off in the mailroom, and work his way to the top.
Yes.
With the help of his brother.
He does, and he seems very sincere in that belief, and he even tries to tell Marco that he needs to clean his act up, and go straight, good job, good life. And with that, Chuck is outside honking the horn, and he's really got to go. So we really see a lot here with Jimmy catering to Chuck's wishes, trying to keep Chuck happy. So he goes outside and flies away to Albuquerque.
And I think this clearly establishes Chuck as the Sean Schick of Better Call Saul.
Yes.
I think at this point we all know exactly what Chuck is. And our first Q&A from John McGavin. I'm surprised we get John McGavin tonight because that Wisconsin basketball team is busy doing Wisconsin basketball stuff, I think. But he's here, and he has shared that Helena thinks that Mel is a knitting goddess.
Aw, that is very sweet because I think she's very much more accomplished than I am. But thank you so much.
All right.
Kelly, where do you fall in the knitting realm?
I am a knitting recipient. I am a consumer of knitting, but that's how I fit in the knitting food chain. Is that?
It's a good place to be.
How about you, Mike? I can kind of imagine to take the edge off. You might knit a few from time to time.
I would love to. I would really like nothing better than to sit in a rocking chair knitting. And I know that sounds maybe like a joke, but it's not. But I am
see you knitting up some gothic lace. Totally. Absolutely, man.
So when I was in grade school, I went to a Catholic grade school, and we had this older nun who tried to teach us to sew by giving us these big, safe plastic needles that I'm pretty sure I stuck through my hand about 6 or 7 times. So any of that sort of crafty needle anything, I stay away from that.
They're useful though. They'll come in handy come the zombie apocalypse.
I need somebody like you on my survival team.
I've got me a lot of needles. I'm prepared.
That's been Mel's pretty consistent point from a defense mechanism, is that knitting needles are your friend in the zombie apocalypse. So
They are.
well
They
noted. And sadly, and this was because we were all Better Call Sauling, and at least I missed the outcome. Unfortunately, Wisconsin came up short tonight, I guess. So sorry, John, but pretty awesome that they beat that other team earlier. So very cool. All right, Michael.
Go sports.
Go sports. Go land crabs. Land crabs. I think they got beat by the land crabs. It was.
Probably.
But go ahead and take us off with Act 1 whenever you like.
Sure. Well, we
Mr.
open up
Pagan?
Act 1. I'm sorry?
Said Mr. Pagan.
Well, we open up Act 1 with Jimmy in the lobby of the offices of his nemesis. What's the plural of nemesis, since now he knows that both of them are... Is it nemesi? Nemesis?
Howards.
I like Nemesis, but I'm pretty sure that's not correct.
You know what? For our purposes, that's it. It's nemesi.
I like it.
He's in the offices of his nemesi in the lobby, and Kim is coming down the stairs above him. She sees him, comes and sits with him. He tells her that he has decided to take her advice and accept the offer that Howard laid out for him. Obviously, she figures out that he knows what's going on with his brother, which is too sad to recount. I'll let Mel do that.
Yeah, so, and Kim's a big winner for me, again in this episode, because she just seems to be strong throughout. But would you have, if you had the information that Kim had about Chuck, would you have shared it with Jimmy or not, Mel?
Absolutely, she should have. I said that before, and that's how I answered the story sync question as well.
Yeah, there's a paper trail, but Mel's position's been consistent.
Yes, she should have told
What about
me.
you, Kelly?
I think I would. I would have told him. I think that would have been better. I don't think she did not tell him because she was being bad. But I think she made the wrong choice there, and I would have told him. And you, Mike?
I don't know. It's tough. You wrestle with these things. Like I have a friend, Scott, whose wife is cheating on him. And I have to look at him every day and not say, Scott, your wife is cheating on you. I've seen her with this other guy out there. Your wife is totally having sex with this other guy that we both know, Scott. And it's hard to keep that inside and not tell. That's a joke.
so you're not going to tell Scott his wife's cheating on him?
I don't know. I don't know what to do. So I know how Kim feels.
Right.
Yeah. So Scott's wife cheating on him. # for the show tonight.
Scott, your wife is cheating on you.
Yes.
See, I let Mel do it for me. She's a good bearer of bad news.
I am. I'm known for that.
I think that was a story sync question too. Is Scott's wife cheating on him? So I guess she is.
He'll never figure it out, though.
No. The good thing is that there's no public record of it, so we're good there.
No,
Right.
Nothing like that. So I mean, obviously, I'm still on the fence there. So it would be really difficult if I was in Kim's position because obviously she, at the very least, values Jimmy's friendship. And you have to think that she could be sacrificing that, even if it's better for him to know the truth. Would you want to know, Mel?
Yes, absolutely. I would want to know.
Kelly?
Yep, I'm there. I'm with Mel. I'd want to know. I wouldn't like it, but I'd want to know.
Yes.
Scott?
And my
Oh, he's
brother
not
would.
here.
Yeah, Scott. Yeah. Would Scott like to know?
Scott, do you want to know?
You want to know your wife's cheating on you, Scott? Let us know.
So in the next scene, we see Jimmy is in Vader's inner sanctum, sitting on a couch facing him. As he's walking towards him, he has the check with him, and he explains it's I believe it was $20,000 that they had agreed upon as a sort of finder's fee, and reminds him that there is going to be more for him on the back end as the case progresses. And closes up. And my favorite line came from this, where
I'm shocked.
Jimmy apologizes in an apology that I've had to say numerous times. And what was the wording again, Kelly?
I just think I'm really sorry I called you a bad name, Howard. I think I may not have it exactly right. I believe it was bleeped out, but I did get pig,
True.
so I'm really sorry I called you a pig something.
So we can only speculate
Yes.
what that might be.
Yes.
But having been in a position where I've had to use those exact words, that was the line that I related to the most.
Okay.
Actually, not surprised whatsoever.
Scott probably has something he'd like to tell you along similar lines.
I hope that, if I do work up the courage to tell Scott that his wife is cheating on him, that, he'll take it well. I don't have a $20,000 check, though, to ease that.
Yeah. And just to be clear, she's not cheating on him with a pig, right? Just to be 100%.
I don't know what happens behind closed doors.
Okay.
She's not being met by a pig, but, we've all seen that episode of Cheaters with the goat.
Maybe not all of us, Mike.
No, YouTube that. You're going to thank me. So, in our next scene, we see Jimmy back in his elder law, young Paul Newman playing Matlock persona in the bingo hall. And there was something about this scene that bothered me, weirdly. This is a nitpicky thing. But as he's standing there and calling the numbers, they have an electronic scoreboard behind him that highlights what has already been called. But instead of having a sign that says bingo, it's balloons. That's inflatable balloons that spell out the word bingo. That just doesn't seem like they put all that money into a giant sign, but then they had to get letter balloons that say they couldn't make another sign that says bingo.
Just not legit, man.
And this was what you were focused on during this scene.
Really, during that scene, that was the dramatic arc for me. But for Jimmy's character, he's getting a little bit stressed as everyone's looking to him and no one's winning at bingo, and ball after ball, as he calls them out, are B words, and he's trying to use analogies to associate with the letters, and it keeps landing on B, so of course it leads him to betrayal and things like that, and we all know why he was betrayed by his brother.
Yes.
And he starts to have a little bit of a breakdown, and instead of calling out the final number that he picks up, he decides to tell his elderly audience, who are enraptured by his Matlock-esque presence, a story about the events that led him to the opening scene that Mel discussed. And it's interesting because I believe the term that he used was Chicago sunroof, which strangely is something I've seen Kelly hashtag a number of times.
Or not. Maybe your recollection's a little faulty there.
I'm pretty sure that's right.
But it's close enough.
But he explains that he sees the white BMW with the white leather interior double parked in front of, was it an ice cream shop?
A Dairy Queen, I believe.
Dairy Queen. And that car belonged to a gentleman who had extramarital relations with his now ex. So he decided that the open sunroof was an opportunity for him to perform a Chicago sunroof. Is perform the right word?
Execute.
I think, formally executes the appropriate terminology.
Mel nailed that one. So he explains that the windows were tinted tinted beyond the legal limits, according to him.
And this, as an Illinois resident, there are strict restrictions to the level of tint level that you can have in a car, so that's factually accurate, that you have an over-tinted car.
This is a Chicago sunroof expert who's explaining this.
This is a car window tint expert.
He knows this situation well. So while he's executing this, he failed to notice, I guess, while climbing atop of the car, that in the back seat were this gentleman's Boy Scout children.
Those poor children.
And there was going to be a very serious charge brought against him that would make him a sex offender for indecently exposing himself in public. And Chuck came and bailed him out, got the charges reduced, and in a sense put Jimmy in his debt.
Yes.
Yeah, and so good friend of the show, Jay, had when Chicago Sunroof came up the first time, had offered a description of that, which was different than the description we've got tonight.
What was Jay's description?
Really not going to go into it at this time, but
was it worse than the description given on the show?
Yeah, I would say it's worse. Worse.
Really?
I would say it's more of a Chicago convertible roof, something kind of coming over and resting on the top of your head, kind of thing. So I don't know. This could be the great Chicago sunroof debate, but I'm going to have to go with, Better Call Saul canon and say the Chicago sunroof is as described by Jimmy in his monologue with the elder law clients.
Yes.
Where do you fall on the great Chicago sunroof debate, Mel?
I'm going to go with Saul's version because that one is benign enough that I can accept that. I don't want to think about it anymore.
Yes. And apparently, and I tried to figure out who tweeted this out here. Gonna have to go back, but we've got some things going. The official Chicago sunroof definition debate is raging on our show. We've got tweets out about it. So we're getting live tweet coverage of the sunroof debate.
Awesome.
So most excellent.
Which I have to assume is already trending.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yes.
I'm sure this is we're breaking the internet with our sunroof debate.
Well, I just wanted to say that I finally decided that my favorite quote from this episode came during the bingo scene, and it was when he said "B," as in Belize.
Yes. Now
I just had to.
And they had there was an article out saying, hey, there's going to be a callback to Breaking Bad in this episode that the big fans of Breaking Bad are going to really love. Mm-hmm. And so when that happened, I thought it was it. And I thought it was pretty cool. And it was close to my favorite quote. But I don't think that necessarily. I think we have another callback coming up that we can talk about.
Yeah, well, there were several, and we've already heard reference to in that monologue that Jimmy already had a wife.
Yes, so
before he even moved to Albuquerque. So there's one wife down.
Yep. So we're still looking for number 2. She's got to be
right.
out there somewhere. And my quote came in the very tail end of this scene as well. Belize was up there close for me, Mel. Mm-hmm. But kitty cat notebooks for everyone was my favorite. That's my favorite quote from himself.
Which is what he says after he throws the microphone down and walks away from his post. What do you think happens then? Do they stop the game? Is just anyone qualified to take over?
I think all the old people rushed the table for the kitty cat notebooks.
That's right.
I'd like to imagine it was a Black Friday situation where they started punching each other for the last kitty cat notebook.
Yes.
It had been like a Black Friday video in slow motion, though. As they all kind of slowly kind of came towards. So you could
tripping each other with their walkers.
There you go. Very, very cool. Alrighty, so we'll catch up on the Q&A from the last segment. Sean had shared that if Howard is indeed Vader, does that make Chuck the Emperor?
I think so.
I think
yes.
I think that's fair enough. we'll go with that. So correct, Sean. Kitty cat notebook for you. And so John McGevness shares, he was certainly glad to find out what sunroof was, but note to self, next time they're in Chicago, they intend to keep their sunroof closed, which is good. And John, if your windows are tinted, I highly recommend untinting them to avoid any outcomes. So, alrighty, so then we move into Act 2, where we have Jimmy returning back to his old stomping ground, Chicago. And he returns back to the bar that we saw him in the cold open, and Marco's there. I think in the same chair, if I'm not mistaken. He's there, and he's kind of passed out, and so they're starting.
Sort of like a realistic version of Cheers.
Yeah. If Cheers was factually accurate, that's would be how it would look. And so they start to catch up. And Marco shares that he's now in the standpipe business. He's all legit there. And he kind of explains it, that apparently this is some sort of intermediate thing between the hose and where the water comes out to put out a fire. And then apparently there's also a dry and wet standpipe, but it was too technical for him to explain, and then he kind of confessed he's not necessarily even sure himself. So more catching up occurs. We find out that Saul's mom has passed away, and I believe Saul's mom was from Wisconsin. So another shout out to the McGevness there.
Yep.
And this is kind of a bit of a sore point for Marco, because he's like, you're in town and you didn't look me up. And and this was a story sync question. I think it'd be kind of a fun one for us. So Jimmy gets back in town for his mother's funeral and does not look up Marco. What would you think? Why did that happen, Mike? Why didn't he look up Marco?
I think that the arc of Jimmy that we've seen prior to this episode is him trying to leave Slip and Jimmy behind. And I think that Marco is a catalyst for him to fall back into his old ways.
I agree. That was my answer as well.
I think Chuck probably made it really clear to Jimmy that wasn't going to happen, because Chuck's a douche. So, but we'll say that.
Do you think it was that? Do you think that it's because Chuck laid down the law and not because Jimmy made that decision on his own?
I'm sure he probably leaned that way, say it's probably better if I don't, but I'm sure Chuck probably also piped up to say, hey, we're here for this, and that's it. I don't want you hanging out with any of your old crew. But
Right. And that seemed to be the majority opinion on that story sync question, is that Chuck told him not to.
Then, as awesome as Jimmy is, we find out he's actually a horrible, rotten, no good, unlovable, despicable person, because he's a Cubs fan. Because when he had a choice to go to a White Sox or a Cubs game, it was going to be a Cubs game. So that kind of ruined the character of Jimmy, and I quit watching the show at that point. So you guys got to finish up here, because that was a little depressing. But
now that's a cross-country skiing team, right?
yes, it is, Mike.
Yeah, I totally missed that entire conversation.
Yep.
Sports ball, you know.
There was a sports ball comment. Just, catch a Cubs game, and it just it was like pouring acid on me. So very disappointing. And then this super cool scam begins, where a guy walks in, and Jimmy says, "Is that a regular?" And Marco says, "No." And so Jimmy looks at him and goes, "You're buying, I'm selling." And he's got a Kennedy $50 in his hand. And then they start on this fascinating story as they're going back and forth, where Jimmy is presenting to Marco a Kennedy silver dollar, explaining that replaced the Lincoln $50. And at that point, Lincoln was facing east towards the dawn, towards the beginning, and apparently a Mint representative felt more Camelot and New Frontier, so Kennedy needed to face west. And so there was a run of 2,000 coins with him facing west. They caught it. They got rid of them. There were about 200 left, and they're all worth about $800. And Jimmy's going to sell it to Marco for the low price of $100. And The guy's not necessarily buying it, thinks it's a scam. Jimmy steps away. Marco calls, in quotes, his friend who he happens to be a guy who knows somebody in the coin industry, to find out if it's legit. And just a little bit like the Rolex scam, they play it really well. And so eventually this guy's hooked into, Marco doesn't quite have the $100. This guy says he'll eventually gets up to $110 and hustles out with his Kennedy silver or half dollar that's worth 50 cents. And Jimmy and Marco are buying.
Yep.
Next round is on them. I really did like it's fun to watch those two work together.
It was, though I have to say the next act was my least favorite. And it's mine to... So,
Sorry.
yeah. So in Act 3, they're still in the bar, and we get this running montage of all of the numerous scams that they basically run on everybody they come across for the next week. So there was, amusingly, a Nigerian prince scam, something involving a violin, and they kept going up to people, "Can you keep a secret?" And this was kind of the catchphrase going around through there. So then there was is this the callback to Breaking Bad? You're talking about the Kevin Costner one?
Yes.
Yes. And a very vile Kevin Costner scam where apparently he tricks some girls into thinking he's either Kevin Costner or Kevin Costner's agent. And
well, I thought it was that Marco was the agent and he was Kevin Costner.
Right. And they've
totally
got
believable.
two young waitresses, and it's morning, and the smarter of the two looks at Jimmy and realizes he's not Kevin Costner, and she grabs her friend Lucy, and they go attempting to rush out of the basement that they're in, some such, with a sticky door. So vile, very vile scam impersonating Kevin Costner and Kevin Costner's agent.
But yeah, that was the callback, and it was cool because there was in Breaking Bad a scene with Saul and Walt in a car, and Saul's explaining to Walt that you just need to commit to it. And he said, there was one time where I told a woman I was Kevin Costner, and she believed me because I believed it. So.
And he looks nothing like Kevin Costner. Anyway, so after all of the scamming is done and the girls run away, he and Marco are sitting in this basement apartment type place, having a little chit chat. And one of my other favorite quotes from the episode, of course, was Marco tells him, well, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Jimmy checks his phone messages. He's got like 15 messages from his old clients back in Albuquerque, and he's just skipping through them all, and he decides that he needs to go back to Albuquerque. And he needs to check on Chuck. And Marco says, anybody? Chuck's a stuck-up douchebag.
He doesn't even like you.
He doesn't even like you, which we have found is the truth. And basically, Marco very pathetically begs him for them to do one more scam with the Rolex,
because he has one left.
He's got one left because the guy that sold them the fake Rolexes got deported. So last fake Rolex, and they just need to pull that whole wolf howling scam one more time. And so they do. We've got Marco dressed up in a suit, standing in an alley, and he's sitting there waiting to hear Jimmy's wolf howl. And he's coughing a little bit. He looks like maybe he doesn't feel that good, but he's happy, man. He looks happy. And then we hear the wolf howl, and he's getting into position, and we cut to Saul and whatever mark he has found. And they're coming down the alley, and just like before, They find the wallet in the middle of the alley, and then a little bit further, Marco laying out on the floor on the dirty alley ground. Only this time, it's not a scam. Marco has apparently had a heart attack, and he is actually, for reals, collapsed in this alley. And Jimmy realizes this and yells at the guy to call 911, which the guy runs away, keeping the wallet with about $1,000 in it, and he gets away. Jimmy pulls out his ancient old phone and he calls 911, and Marco wakes up and he basically thanks him for that was the best week of his life. And then he tragically expires.
Which is a little sad that was his best week.
It is.
Hey, Mike, if you've got the Q&A up, I'd like for you to field the most recent Q&A question from Jay.
Give me 1 second.
Sure, absolutely.
Would the Kevin Costner scam be the greatest? Gives new meaning to Slip and Jimmy, right?
Thoughts?
Vile, I say.
I don't know. I think you get what you deserve. If you actually buy into Jimmy McGill being Kevin Costner, I have no sympathy for you. I just don't.
Plus, all right, let's be reasonable here. If you're choosing to go home, even if, let's say, you believe that Jimmy is Kevin Costner, and you choose to go home with Kevin Costner, what was the last truly good Kevin Costner movie?
Hey.
You're not doing it because you're a current fan. You're just doing it to have some sort of name recognition to your one-night stand. So I feel like you kind of earned it.
Well, this is
You're like somebody who went to see Waterworld a second time in theaters because you convinced yourself there was some deeper meaning you missed the first time.
Hey now, I like that movie.
That's
I
right.
actually like Waterworld as well.
And this was pre-Waterworld. This is Dancing with Wolves time, because during the whole scam montage, there's a little wave in there of Dancing with Wolves guy, and so that's out there a little bit. So Jay's pressing us a lot today in the Q&A, and I have high confidence that Mike, who's quite the movie expert, will go. So apparently this is a quote: "Wake up, time to die, Marco." And that quote is from what movie? I don't know. Do you know, Mike?
Kevin Costner movie?
No, I think this is just a movie. Jay's not noted on staying on point. He's just.
Oh. I'm still trying to think of Kevin Costner movies, and sadly, I think I'm still stuck on Waterworld and Dances with Wolves.
If any of our listeners know from what movie "Wake Up, Time to Die" Marco comes from, go ahead and tweet that out to let us know, and we'll see there. So you stumped the Saul and Battery crew, Jay. We'll see if our listeners can do a little bit better or Google faster than we can. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
You want to take us?
Yeah, that was the end of Act 3.
Cool. You want to take us home, Mike?
Sure.
Take it away.
This is actually as far as my notes went.
Okay.
Oh, really? Well, I have notes for Act 4 if you would like me to.
Sure. Why don't you take it,
Go.
Kelly?
Go ahead, Kelly.
All right.
I mean, I have notes, of course, but I'm going to let you take this one, Kelly.
How magnanimous of you! I truly appreciate it.
But you need to talk more so we can see the kettle hat.
That's right. That's
That's what it is.
and actually only the kettle hat. Maybe I should do the rest of the talking like this for the whole thing, and then people could just watch the kettle hat. Anyway, so we go to the final scene, or the final act, and they're at a church, and Jimmy comes out and bums a cigarette, and indicates that Marco's mom gave him Marco's ring, and he's not a big ring guy, but he's going to kind of keep it. And again, a great story sync moment. I was pretty sure I recalled Saul did sport a little bit of ring wear, and indeed that ring is still with Saul in Breaking Bad. So that was kind of another nice little callback from there.
Good. I missed that part in story sync, but I thought it looked familiar. I thought it was the same ring he was wearing. So cool.
And then Kim calls asking for Ferris Bueller. Cute. Thought that was nice. And is giving him an update that there's a Davison, Maine law firm that is the class action's getting bigger than they thought, and HHM needs to bring in somebody else, and so they're going to bring in this other law firm. And the other law firm has seen Jimmy's work and has been very impressed and would like to take him onto something that would include a partner track. And this was, it was interesting because this is where, the relationship between Jimmy and Kim has always been so strong and good. And it's just almost, I was reading this scene like he wasn't really buying what she was offering, or he wasn't, I wouldn't say buying, but he wasn't really that open to it. Did you guys get that feel?
He seemed to be kind of, I think he kind of felt like he was getting scammed, even though Kim wouldn't be one that would scam him, but maybe his recent week of scammerology made him suspicious. Yeah, he seemed to be a little disbelieving that anybody would want him. Maybe it's just a blow to his ego from finding out his own brother thinks he's a scumbag, but yes, he did seem to be disbelieving.
Yeah.
I was wondering, too, if maybe he thought it was some sort of a pity thing, that maybe she had a friend at this law firm that got involved and begged them, like, we have this guy who can't get a job. Can you find something for him? And I'll throw around the word partner, but he's basically the next step up over the mailroom.
Yep. Yeah, it seemed to be that there, but and I think she even kind of sensed that because she kind of kept coming back around. Cause he's like, "Oh, so did you do something?" And she's like, "Well, no, Howard's been pushing for this." And they said one of the biggest things was they talked to all of Jimmy's clients, and his clients loved him, and that was part of the reason that they were interested in, which I thought was cool. Just that Jimmy was an up and coming elder law lawyer, a young Paul Newman in a Matlock suit, and then
old people love him.
That's right. Chuck had to jack it all up, so it's just not cool. But so we have John McGevna throwing out Blade Runner as the guest for Wake Up, Time to Die, and I think he's probably right. So thank you, John.
Thank you.
We're going to declare you're right, even if you're not. As far as we're concerned, congratulations.
It is now. There's multiple versions of Blade Runner, so I feel like you're safe. It was probably in one of them.
I'm fairly certain that phrase had to show up in there somewhere.
One phrase that doesn't show up in Blade Runner is the upstairs jackholes, which we'll come back to the gentleman who provided us that, because we cut back to now Chuck's place, and there's a gentleman in there who's Chuck's saying, "Oh, you're pretty close, but you got me the wrong apples." He's got very specific ideas on what the apples were. Red versus green didn't seem to be that picky to me. I think that's a reasonable distinction, but then he was getting down into Fuji versus all sorts of others.
Fuji's, not Red Delicious.
That's
Fuji's.
Right.
Which I had a big problem with. I love Red Delicious apples. It has delicious in the name.
That's right.
How said they were tasteless?
They're delicious.
It says it in the name.
Yeah, they're not called Red Tasteless. So.
Exactly.
He's a lawyer. He can twist anything.
But he wants him to write it down, which he does. But this was Ernie, and Story Sync again was a place that was helped to make the connection in the scene where the whole kind of mailroom group are congratulating Jimmy for passing the bar. Ernie is one of the folks in there, and he was the one that said, well, now you got to take care of those jackholes upstairs, just as Vader comes looming into the room. So it's nice to see.
Well, when he gave Vader the list, Vader did seem genuinely surprised that this is, the extent that he was going to help Chuck through his, whether it's mental or physical, his issues.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm I'm warming to Howard. I think we may have misjudged Howard. He may not be all that bad a guy. Now he called Jimmy Charlie Hustle, so that's not
Yeah.
endearing to me, but feels a little patronizing. But it is what it is. So
I just feel like maybe Howard was Chuck's pawn. That Howard, whether or not he liked Jimmy, didn't really matter.
Hmm.
I think if Chuck said give Jimmy a better position, he would have.
I think you're right. I just think he really wanted to keep Chuck associated somehow, and was
Right, and he
Gonna be
may not
different.
have liked Jimmy, but I don't think it was a make or break thing for him either way.
Yes, he's slipping away from the Vader. But I don't know. I just like having a Lord Vader in Better Call Saul. Somebody has to be Vader.
Yeah, and he.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say he's a good guy.
No, but he's not the horrible guy that we thought. It's the redemption of Vader.
Which happened, it does
It did.
happen. So,
It did.
and well, it comes back to, I guess, Chuck is the Emperor, as questioned earlier. So there you go.
He's a douchebag.
Yeah, and so now the combination of a brother kind of turning his back on him, and then a week of scamology. Is that the term, Mel? Yeah,
I thought that was a great montage, though.
it was, and kind of old school look, very, very cool. These have all kind of weighed and started to affect Jimmy, and to the extent that he comes buzzing by. We finally get to see Mike again. It's always nice to see him. He comes whistling in, and he's heading to the court because this is going to be the big meeting with the new law firm. And as we saw in earlier episodes, he's practicing as he's coming in, how he's going to say it, and all of these types of things. And then he kind of stops before he goes in and turns around and leaves, and comes up to the sticker troll, who, shockingly enough, does not demand stickers, even though it was a short visit. I expected at least a one sticker toll charge from the sticker troll, but he's like, "You're good, you can go through." And then there's this very kind of telling conversation between Mike and Jimmy, where Jimmy's bringing up the point to say, we had $1.6 million laying on a table between us. We could have each walked off with $800,000 tax-free, and we didn't. Why? Why did we do that? And Mike shares, kind of very consistent with his character, to say, I was hired to do a job, I did my job, and I took the money related to my job. It's back to the whole kind of honest criminal or good criminal versus bad criminal kind of talk from previous week.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jimmy says, I know what stopped me, and it's never stopping me again. And he heads off down the road, singing Smoke on the Water, or doing the notes to Smoke on the Water.
Yes.
Because I don't think the Esteem actually came with a radio. I think that would be a luxury. The LX Esteem might have a radio, but
Yeah.
I don't think the standard issue one did.
Yeah. So there we go. How long till he changes his name to Saul Goodman?
So has the Jimmy McGill that we've all kind of become to know and love died, and at this point it's just a little Saul embryo that grows to be a full Saul, or is there any chance that we're going to see some more of the likable portions of Jimmy McGill next season? What do you think, Mel?
I think we might see some flare-ups of Jimmy as his conscience raises its ugly head, but I think he's on the way to Saul. This is pretty much his transformation to little embryo Saul, but I don't think we've seen the absolute end of Jimmy, because Jimmy's not a bad guy. Jimmy's got a conscience. He believes in things, but I think we're going to see him wrestle with some decisions that he ultimately makes.
How about you, Mike? You think next season 2 starts off first episode with, if not the name change, at least the behavior change of full kind of embryo Saul emerging, or not?
Yeah, I think the very end of this was the emergence of Saul. I think we saw him, at that fork in the road choice where he could either go into the courthouse, continue working his way up from another mailroom this time, or he can take the opportunities that he intentionally passed up on before and fall into grow into Saul, not fall into Saul.
Yeah.
Grow into the Saul we all know and love.
Yep. Yeah, and we've mentioned this on a couple of previous shows is that Jimmy McGill was likable and Saul, while highly entertaining, likable's a bit of a stretch for Phobos, because he's just kind of.
He wanted to send Jesse to Belize.
You know what? I think Saul is likable though.
He's endearing. That's for sure. I found him endearing, but because even when he is suggesting maybe Jesse should go police, how he delivers it's so awesome because it's just like because it was somewhat a method that worked out well for you in the not so distant past. He just kind of rolls it out in a nice way. But I don't know. It was fun. So we got 10
I think
episodes.
the difference is that Jimmy's sympathetic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Saul isn't sympathetic, but he is likable.
Yes. Jimmy is an underdog, and Saul is not. He knows what he's doing. He's in control. Yeah.
Yeah, but when Jesse beat him up in his office while he's yelling, "Code Red! Code Red!" He was an underdog then. I felt sorry for him. But, there were a few moments. Yeah, I think Mike hit it on the head, too, is that he's certainly not a sympathetic character. He's enjoyable and endearing and kind of fun, but sympathy maybe not so much. So,
yeah.
Any kind of collective thoughts? So we now have 10 episodes of Better Call Saul. I've had a chance to watch. I'd like to thank both of you for doing this with me because it's been fun to talk about it afterwards. So personally for me, I really enjoyed the season. There's parts of this finale that I'm not like super excited about, but it's more about an inevitable arc. Jimmy's gonna become Saul. I can't, that's gonna happen, and to actually start to see the turn, because I like the Jimmy character so much, that's a little, sad for me.
Right.
But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Mike, a lot more Mike kind of introducing this. It looks like Nacho seems like a fun guy, and we see some more. So I really collectively enjoyed it, and I'm very much looking forward to season 2. Mike, what are your kind of collective thoughts for the first season?
What I'm interested to see is, we were introduced to the Jimmy character, and I was with Kelly. I was hoping that, this is fine for the first episode or two. Then he becomes Saul, and we really get going. But they use Jimmy throughout the season, and you really see him how he sort of, changed his path into becoming Saul. And he was a much more sympathetic character. Saul was likable. Jimmy was sympathetic. And what I'm interested to see is if now knowing his backstory and why he is the way he is that going to change your perception of him as he becomes Saul? Do you think if you went back and rewatched Breaking Bad now, knowing Saul's backstory, would that change your feelings on the character in any way?
I don't know. I don't know if it would change. It could. I don't know. I probably didn't pay as close attention to all of Saul's lines as Kelly did.
Yeah, that's because I truly did. I really enjoyed the Saul character throughout. There were, I don't know if it would necessarily change. What I'm hoping is somewhere in the process in Breaking Bad, towards the end when Saul needs to clean out his safe one time and he's reaching through there. There's a mummified hand in the safe. It's one of the things in the safe is a mummified hand. So I'm hopeful that in season 2 we get a little bit of mummified hand backstory. So, but
Yeah.
I really like Saul, and this has just done nothing but, it's like, not only did I like the character Saul, I now found out before he became Saul, he was actually a much nicer, likable, compassionate guy. So I think
Yeah.
I'll say I'm gonna be a big Saul fan still.
Yeah, and before the finale, Mr. Odenkirk was doing a Ask Bob thing on Twitter, and he had said that he played Saul as that character just as a public. That's like the public face of Saul Goodman. We really didn't see anything about what went on in the private life of Saul Goodman, and so I don't know. That's one of those things that's come up of that's something that maybe we could see if we ever get into the Breaking Bad timeline. We might see the personal life of Saul Goodman during all of that. And he had said himself during that Q&A thing that he would like to see Jesse make an appearance. And I'm all for Jesse coming back.
Who would you guys like to see that we haven't seen yet?
Badger and Skinny Pete.
Absolutely.
I think they're magic, and the A-Team. That's the other backstory I'm desperate to hear is how Huel and QB end up in Saul's employ, because those guys were hilarious too. So
Yeah,
couple of duos.
Doug Close asked that question, but I did not see that Mr. Odenkirk actually answered that particular question about Huel, but he was asked about it. It didn't come up, but hopefully they show up next season as he gets Saul rolling.
Anybody in particular you want to see, Mike?
I think story-wise, it's got to be the A-Team. I need to know their backstory. I need to know what they were doing before Saul.
Before they were rolling around on Walt's money.
As great as it would be to see Badger and Skinny Pete, as far as backstories go, it's got to be the A-Team for me.
Yeah, because there's a story there. There is. That would be a good one. Yeah,
and maybe we're going to get some extra dimension on Huel's intestinal tract issues as well, since apparently every once in a while he's really in a rush. Anyway, on that uplifting note, Creative, again, I wanted to thank both of you for joining in on this silliness, and like to thank the folks that have been hanging with us throughout these 10 shows, interacting with us on Twitter in the Q&A. Whole purpose of doing this is people that like the show and want to talk about it afterwards. So we really appreciate. We've had several of regular viewers that have interacted a lot, and thank you for that. So
yes.
I have nothing else to add unless either one of you. I'm going to turn the hat to the other direction for season 2.
Yeah.
So McGavna's pretty convinced that Huel's still sitting in a motel room. Maybe that's we get a flash forward. We're going to see a very thin and trim Huel still in that hotel room.
Poor Huel. Yeah. No, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Mike, and everybody that's interacted with us, because I think we found quite a few people out there who like Better Call Saul, even though they weren't watching Breaking Bad at the time. So during the break before season 2, all of you should go back and watch Breaking Bad.
That's right. And then the whole Kevin Costner thing will be all that more awesome when it happens, because you're like, oh, I know what's going on. And that was the one last thing is that they have called back to it, but they haven't gone to that well too much.
Right. It's just a squee moment for all of us fanboys and girls out there. If you didn't watch it, you haven't really missed anything. But
no. Yeah, it's not significant, but it's just kind of a nice little note. So,
yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mel. And thanks, everybody, for listening. And
Bodyguard. That's another Kevin Costner movie.
Yeah.
Not the best.
Not so much.
I prefer Waterworld. Thank you.
So do I.
It's unanimous. So on that note, Waterworld's better than The Bodyguard, and you'll be hearing from us again. Definitely after the first episode of season 2, and maybe we'll do one more thing. Maybe we won't. We'll see. We'll keep you posted on Twitter. But thanks everybody for listening, and Mel and Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.